my name is Adriana, and today I'm going to talk about the causes of the French Revolution. First of all, before knowing and getting into the actual causes, it's good to know how life was at those times, at the 19th century. Now they have feudalism and absolutism. Feudalism was a class system based on land ownership. So basically there was a king and there was a queen, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. And then the king owned all the land. Then he gave his land to the nobles in exchange for service. Then the nobles gave it to the less wealthy people, to say it that way, in exchange for money or service. And then these less wealthy people gave it to the farmers because they needed it for agriculture, in exchange again for service or something. So the feudal system consisted of 3 estates. We had the first estate, which was the Roman Catholic clergy, and they were the high members of the church, like the Pope, the priests, the bishops, and they were privileged people. Then we had the second estate. The first estate was only 1% of the population and they didn't pay taxes. Then the second estate consisted of the nobles, and it was about 2% of the population. They owned 20% of the land. And lastly, we have the third estate, which is 97% of the population, and they had to pay most of the taxes, half of their income taxes, and they had little rights. They were divided in 3. The bourgeoisie, which were the wealthy Americans and the skilled workers. Then the city workers, which were poorly paid servants, like cooks. And lastly, the peasants, which were 80% farmers. As I already said, agriculture was very, very important at that time. So the problem here comes, like if you see this and you say, oh my god, the third estate pays most of the taxes and they have little rights, why don't they do anything if they are the majority of the population? Well, God was everything at that time. Religion was very, very important, and they thought that God was the one that chose the king, and if anyone said that that the king wasn't good enough or criticized the king, it meant that they were criticizing God, because it was God's choice. So basically, God put the world in motion. God put some people in positions of power. Power is given by God. No one can question God. No one can question someone put in power by God. In summary, questioning the monarchy meant questioning God. And you would be in big trouble if you actually did that. So, starting with the causes. We have the political causes, which I've already said one, which is absolutism. Okay, there's one king. And this king, which is Louis XVI, doesn't want to face the economic crisis which France is suffering. He doesn't even mind. He has his own power, he has money, he has food, he has everything, so why thinking about the rest? The public criticized him because of this, but he didn't even mind. He was too harsh. Then we have the intellectual causes. The intellectual causes were the Enlightenment ideas. The Enlightenment was basically defended liberty and equality. Now the feudal class society, as we already saw, wasn't equal at all. So the population started to think more and more about the Enlightenment ideas, and even the philosophers started to defend the Enlightenment ideas. But they did it in a way to help the people think about the revolutionary mind, okay, but not in a violent way. They didn't want the revolution to be something violent. They said that they needed it, but don't be violent because it could become even a war. Then we have the economic causes. Now, these are the key to explain the revolution. Most of the problem came from the economic causes because, as I already said earlier on, agriculture was very important at that time. But there was a year, to be more specific, 1788, where the weather wasn't good. There were loads of natural disasters, including drought, which was the most important. And if they had drought and they had loads of natural disasters, they couldn't keep on with the agriculture, and the third estate was going down and down. 80% of the population we're talking about was going down and down. They didn't have money because they didn't sell the food. And if they didn't sell the food, they were going to put the prices up higher. And if they put the prices higher, the other people from the third estate wouldn't be able to cope and pay for the bread. As Ernest Labrosse said, in 1788, the wheat reached the highest price of the century. And this caused many families from the third estate, obviously, to starve. So financial crisis had a strong impact on the revolution. And then some economy ministers, like Turgot or Necker, they saw what was happening at the third estate. And the third estate couldn't continue like that because they were all gonna die. They couldn't stay like that. They didn't have any money. Whilst the first estate, the nobles, were spending all the money. Like Marie Antoinette, for example, loved jewelry and clothes and foods, and they were spending all the money on those things. While they knew that other people from their population were dying from starvation. Now, that's a very bad way of thinking, and how can you even think about it? So, what they said to the king that the church and nobles should also pay taxes, and that way we could be a little bit better, like give some help to the third estate. But the king didn't want that. Basically because the king was also defending the American War of Independence, and he was giving loads of resources to that war. So they were losing loads of things. The king only wanted to be famous and rich and have his things. He didn't mind all the other people. So this is known as the rebellion of the privileged, okay? Now we have the social causes. The social causes came because bourgeoisie wasn't really living on that bad condition. The bourgeoisie were skilled workers and everything, and they weren't really suffering from that crisis. They did have money to pay the taxes, so but they wanted to be more important. So why nobles that did exactly the same work as them and everything, and they had nearly the same money, had to pay less taxes than them? They wanted to be equal. So the bourgeoisie was the one that got more into the Enlightenment ideas way of thinking and the revolutionary way of thinking. So as there were many problems, they came in National Assembly. Okay, the king made a National Assembly to raise new taxes. It was on May the 5th of 1789. But the problem here was that there was only one vote per class. So the king had one vote, the second estate had one vote, and the third estate had one vote. And that was not fair, because there were more representatives from each class. There were like 50 representatives more from the third class, because they were obviously 97% of the population. And how comes 1%, and 97% have all the same rights and of voting, like one vote each? That wasn't fair. The bourgeoisie didn't want that, and the people didn't want that, so they said, no, stop that. We don't want that. We're not going to do what the king says. So we are all going to come and we're going to declare ourselves in a National Assembly. The third stage, we're going to get in a meeting and we're going to start the revolution because we think this is not fair. So in June 17th of 1789 again, the revolution, the French Revolution, started with this assembly. Thank you.